I compiled cold cheating evidence, triggered the prenup clause, executed a surgical divorce coup, and watched a constructed life collapse completely. She said it between bites of asparagus. No tension in her voice, no apology, no lead-in, not even eye contact. I slept with my boss. Big deal. She didn't look up from her plate. Just popped another forkful in like she was reciting the weather. The way she said it, indifferent, mechanical, practiced, made my skin crawl more than if she'd screamed it into my face. The clock behind her ticked. 7:12 p.m. I stared at the flame of the candle flickering between us and blinked once. Just once. Cassandra sipped her wine, some overpriced bottle she'd picked out last week after a client dinner. She swirled it, sniffed it, and smiled faintly, like she had just unburdened herself and now felt lighter, liberated. I didn't flinch. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise an eyebrow. Instead, I calmly placed my fork down, folded the linen napkin with my usual symmetry, and stood up from the table. She kept chewing. Her eyes flicked up, finally, with just a glint of something. Not regret, not fear. No, this was confusion, like she couldn't quite figure out why I wasn't giving her the performance she was expecting. "Doug," she said, drawing out the O like I was a child about to be corrected. I walked past her. "Doug, come on," she said, laughing now. "You're not seriously mad, are you? It's not like we've been close lately. You're always so distant, so methodical." Still, I said nothing. My steps echoed against the hardwood. It was always her complaint, that I didn't react, that I was too cold, that I processed things like data in a spreadsheet instead of emotions in a marriage. But what she never understood was that silence isn't weakness, it's preparation. I entered the hallway, past the framed photo from Aruba, the one she made me pose for in that ridiculous straw hat, and moved toward the study. She stayed at the table, assuming, I'm sure, that I'd go stew in my man cave, maybe return in an hour to try and talk things out while she played the victim and blamed stress, her boss, hormones, and eventually me. But I didn't go to stew. I went to complete. You don't work in logistics for 31 years without learning how to build a system, anticipate failure, and have contingencies locked and loaded. Cassandra always thought of me as boring, reliable, predictable. She thought that meant harmless. She forgot that I spend my life designing fail-safes, and she had just triggered one. I heard her chair creak. She wasn't laughing anymore, probably realizing the silence had stretched a bit too long, that the absence of emotion wasn't apathy. It was tension, controlled, boiling beneath glass. And glass breaks. "Doug," she called out again, sharper this time. I paused at the doorway to my study. Her voice echoed behind me, but I didn't turn around. Just 3 words. Calm, final. "Finish your wine." And then I closed the door behind me. The click of the door might as well have been a steel vault slamming shut on 20 years of pretense. I didn't rush. I didn't need to. Every step had already been mapped out, logged, time-stamped, just like the logistics systems I spent my career perfecting. Cassandra thought she was unpredictable. But predictable people make the best mistakes. They repeat patterns, use the same hotel, keep the same excuses, even cheat the same way their boss does, sloppily, arrogantly, like no one would ever bother to trace the mess they leave behind. I sat down at my desk and powered on the tower, my personal rig, encrypted, air-gapped, double-authenticated. She thought I just used it to play chess and budget spreadsheets. Cute. The interface loaded. Desktop clean. Only one icon sat waiting in the corner, a folder titled In-Game. Click. Inside, a full backup of her phone from 6 weeks ago, extracted via Wi-Fi sync when she left it charging on the kitchen island. Transcribed WhatsApp voice messages between her and Martin, that would be the boss, including one particularly colorful rant about how she needed someone who wasn't built like a filing cabinet. Calendar events cross-referenced with GPS pings from the Tesla app I had mirrored onto my account 6 months ago. Voice recordings from the in-car assistant triggered by a routine phrase she used to call him, call Martin, private cell. The AI logs those commands, stores them in the cloud. She didn't know that. The cherry on top, her business dinner receipt from 3 Thursdays ago, billed to her company card. The same night I had brought home takeout, and she'd claimed she was too tired to talk. I even had a screen grab of the restaurant's check-in history showing her table for 2 under Cassie. Everything cataloged, dated, sorted. No accusations, no assumptions, just evidence. Cold, neat rows of it. I dragged the folder to the USB drive labeled Turnkey and watched the progress bar fill like a slow-burning fuse. There was something cathartic about it, the clean click of digital vengeance. No chaos, no shouting, just verification. Once the transfer finished, I popped the drive out and laid it on the blotter. Then I reached for the envelope. It wasn't some crumpled thing, it was heavyweight, off-white. The kind used for wedding invitations or retirement announcements. Appropriate, I thought. After all, I was announcing the death of her illusion and the retirement of my silence. I slipped the USB inside. Then, and this part was deliberate, I grabbed a red fine-tip pen and wrote 2 words on the front. Dead center, in small, meticulous print. Your turn. She thought she'd gotten the first move, that she'd tilted the board in her favor. No. She was just the warm-up, the pawn sacrifice. Now came the game she didn't even know she was in. I sealed the envelope and placed it face down in the center of my desk. She was still in the kitchen, probably rinsing her plate or checking Instagram or texting Martin something smug. She had no idea the reckoning was already archived. She wouldn't see it tonight. Not yet. First, I had to schedule the drop, precisely, discreetly. And when it landed, it wouldn't just be a message. It would be a verdict. The house was quiet by 10 o'clock. Cassandra was on the couch, legs curled under her, sipping her second glass of Pinot Noir and cackling at some late-night streaming comedy special. The laugh she used when she wanted to sound carefree younger. The kind of laugh that said, "Look at me, I'm still fun." It echoed down the hall like nails dragged gently across drywall. I didn't watch. I didn't comment. She glanced back once and caught me in the doorway. I gave her a slight smile. Practiced, warm, meaningless. She smiled back, oblivious. She probably thought I'd cooled off, gone upstairs to lick my ego. Maybe she assumed a stiff drink and a long shower would break me down by morning. Let her believe it. I walked up the stairs, closed the bedroom door behind me, and sat down at my desk. My personal laptop, separate from my work machine, sat waiting in sleep mode. I tapped the space bar. The glow from the screen cut a clean halo through the dark room. No distractions, just numbers, terms, and time. I opened the folder labeled Prenup 197 Final. Most people forget those documents exist after they sign them. Cassandra had assumed time diluted it like wedding vows or gym memberships, but mine was bulletproof. I knew it because I'd updated it every 4 years like clockwork, just in case. Always legally valid, always notarized. And most importantly, it had a clause. Fidelity. Breach of that clause voided any right she had to the condo, the retirement shares, the healthcare plan, and most importantly, my name. She would walk away with exactly what she brought in. I cross-checked the clause's wording, still ironclad. Then I opened a blank email and began typing. Subject: Execution of Clause 14, Prenuptial Agreement. Body: per our previous documentation and the attached evidence package, I am invoking Clause 14, subsection B, effective immediately. I authorize you to begin proceedings for asset protection, emergency financial isolation, and pre-divorce filings under Section 4.3. I attached the folder from the USB backup, the same one titled Turnkey. Evidence, dates, times, transcripts. It wasn't rage, it wasn't revenge, it was logistics. By midnight, the email was sent. At 12:13 a.m., I received confirmation. My attorney, Stewart, didn't need details. He knew my style. He simply wrote, "Understood. I'll handle it discreetly. Expect first drafts tomorrow afternoon." By 1 o'clock a.m., I was on the banking portal. Our joint checking account split. Her debit card flagged, access to the emergency fund revoked, not denied, just frozen quietly, surgically. I left her personal savings alone. I wasn't cruel, just clean. At 2:45 a.m., I drafted the apartment notification. I was the sole leaseholder. Cassandra had never signed anything. She assumed marriage was the paper that mattered. It wasn't. The condo board would receive the request for authorized occupant removal within 24 hours. With the prenup active, she'd have no leg to stand on. By 3:30 a.m., I'd packed a week's worth of clothes into a duffel bag. 1 suit, 2 dress shirts, casuals. Nothing sentimental, just inventory. At 4:10 a.m., I printed a bullet-pointed list of the exact items she could keep. No arguments later, no messy fights about who gets what. It wasn't emotional, it was a transaction, a controlled demolition of a structure no longer viable. I sat there in the low blue glow of the monitor, breathing in the silence. At 5:22 a.m., I walked back downstairs. She was still asleep on the couch, wine glass on the coffee table, her head tilted slightly like she was mid-smirk even in her dreams, maybe dreaming of Martin, maybe of nothing at all. I placed the envelope, the one that said "Your turn," neatly on the dining table, right next to the coffee mug she always ignored, the one that read #BossLady. Fitting. I didn't say goodbye. Didn't even glance back. I stepped out, locking the door behind me with a click that sounded far too satisfying. Let her wake up to silence. Let her start guessing. She woke up sometime around 7:15 a.m. I know this because the Tesla pinged her profile activation. The car logs that when the driver's seat adjusts to her preferences, and she always checks her email at red lights. But what she saw first was the envelope. It was sitting where her smoothie glass usually went, right on top of a pale yellow placemat, clean, centered, like a surgical instrument laid out before an operation. She probably thought it was a letter, maybe even an apology. She opened it expecting groveling. Instead, a single matte black USB drive slid into her hand. Heavy, cold, no label, just weight. She plugged it into her laptop. The contents unfolded like a quiet funeral. First folder. Messages. Every text between her and Martin from the last 3 months, organized by date with timestamps, metadata intact. The ones that said, "Bring wine this time. You owe me for last night." Doug's got no clue. He still thinks I'm swamped with Q3 reports. LOL. I swear if I have to pretend to like his roasted chicken one more time, I'll scream. Every emoji, every photo, even the voice notes, transcribed and backed up. Second folder. Meetings. A spreadsheet, 2 columns. Column A, Cassandra's work calendar, recurring strategy sessions after hours. Column B, hotel bookings under her Marriott business account. Each entry color-coded, her off-site brainstorms lined up perfectly with 2-bedroom suite reservations billed straight to the company. Third folder, audio. A single file, a 5-second clip from her Tesla's cloud history, synced through the onboard voice assistant. Cassandra speaking. He's married. Yeah, but Doug doesn't need to know. He'd never do anything. She set it on speaker, hands probably on the wheel on her way to brunch or bed or both. The AI clipped it for quality control. I clipped it for closure. Fourth file, Prenup Clause 14, PDF. The original agreement, scanned and signed. My signature, hers, 2 witnesses, 1 notary. 3 lines highlighted in red. Infidelity on the part of either spouse voids all claim to shared assets, retirement accounts, spousal support, and residential entitlement. Fidelity to be defined as sexual or romantic contact outside of marriage, without prior written consent. Violations shall be determined via documented evidence by either party, including but not limited to text communications, photographs, voice recordings, or third-party testimony. The folder closed itself with a soft mechanical click. Not a threat, not a warning, a verdict. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I didn't throw her out of the house. Instead, I handed her the final results like a well-compiled quarterly report. Just facts, just data. I wanted her to sit there alone in that robe she always wore after long nights and feel it. The exact moment the curtain lifted. Not from a fight, but from a file. Let her heart skip when she realized I hadn't just found out. I had been building a case. Every eye roll, every fake smile, every fake client dinner, all quietly observed, documented, stitched together with timestamps and red ink. I imagine her looking at the folder names with her mouth slightly open, hands trembling just a little, trying to process how the hell I got it all. She thought I was slow, predictable, reliable Doug, the guy who packed his own lunch and labeled leftovers. But here's the thing about men like me. We don't yell, we don't chase. We build systems, and then we watch you walk right into them. And now she had. At 7:58 a.m., the first message landed. Cassandra, what is this? Why are you doing this? Not I'm sorry. Not let me explain. Just what is this? Like she'd tripped over a laundry basket I'd left out, not detonated a mine buried neatly beneath her manicured life. I didn't respond. Of course I didn't. I was already halfway downtown, sipping black coffee in the back of a Lincoln Town car, watching the city roll by like the credits of a movie she'd never finish. My phone buzzed again at 8:06. Cassandra, we need to talk. Please. I swiped it away. At 8:24, the third message came in. Cassandra, Doug, are you really doing this? This is insane. Just call me. That one made me smile. Insane. The word manipulators use when you don't fold after they break the rules, when you don't dance to the guilt-ridden rhythm they were banking on. I stepped into the office building. My lawyer, Stuart Harding, was already waiting outside the conference room, tablet under his arm, smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He was my age, with the kind of composure most men develop only after being divorced twice and winning both settlements. We shook hands. No small talk. Inside the room were two things: a leather folder with my initials embossed on it, and a stack of documents held together with a single, black clip that looked like it could slice if you weren't careful. Stuart opened with a single sentence: "Clause 14 is officially triggered. Will hit the judge's desk by end of business." He slid the folder toward me. I read through each line slowly, methodically, because I could, not because I needed to. Everything was exactly where I wanted it. Freeze order on joint financial assets. Active. Motion for temporary spousal distance agreement. Drafted. Revocation of authorized occupant status in the condo. Stamped and ready. Ethics packet submission to her corporate HR. Scheduled for 11 a.m. Sharp. Anonymous, but verified. At 9:03, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number at first. She was calling from the condo line. Her voice broke through the speaker before I even said hello. Doug, please, can you just talk to me?" Sniffle, deep breath, classic Cassandra. "I don't understand what this is. Are you trying to humiliate me? Is this some kind of punishment?" I didn't answer. She started crying. "I know I made a mistake, okay, but this is cruel. You don't have to do this." She was trying everything now: shock, guilt, reversal, the old bag of tricks. But none of it landed. Not this time. I ended the call without a word. Turned to Stuart. "Next step." He nodded. We sent the digital asset list to her email. Full breakdown of the items she could keep. Everything else locked at noon. Outside, the clouds were starting to shift. The city looked sharp, cut from glass and consequence. By now, she was pacing the living room, phone in hand, starting toward the front door like I might walk in and take it all back, but the first wouldn't. Because this wasn't an argument. This wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't even a betrayal anymore. This was procedure. And her tears were just part of the noise that gets filtered out when the gears start turning. Cassandra had made one fatal assumption: that I would react like a husband. She forgot I was a planner, and the plan had already moved on without her. Cassandra's descent into panic began exactly 12 minutes after I hung up. At 9:15 a.m., she opened her laptop. I know because the IP address registered multiple deletion attempts across her cloud backups, a desperate scattershot attempt to undo what had already been printed, signed, and handed off. First, she started deleting message threads, the ones with Martin, the ones with her assistant where she joked about riding the CEO ladder to promotion. Even old calendar entries she must have thought looked suspicious in hindsight. She went full bonfire mode, dragging files to trash, emptying them, reformatting folders like she thought the internet had a rewind button. Then came the app resets. WhatsApp, Telegram, LinkedIn. She changed passwords, enabled two-factor authentication, even disabled photo syncing on her phone as if that would retroactively erase the ones already archived. By 9:32, she was on the phone with Martin. I imagine her voice cracked midway through her sentence, because corporate sharks like him don't offer comfort. They offer silence the moment liability enters the room. And Martin, he was nothing if not a liability calculator. Whatever she told him, it didn't help, because while she was frantically trying to unpour the wine, I had already poured it, corked it, and mailed to her boss's compliance officer with a bow. At 10 o'clock on the dot, HR received the packet, delivered anonymously but with all the polish of an internal audit. Screenshots, timeline, company card receipts, and a small note attached. Employee misconduct may compromise team integrity. Please review communication patterns between VP Cassandra R. and CEO Martinelli, including expense overlaps and after-hours meeting logs. By 10:18, the email had been forwarded to two higher-ups and the Internal Ethics Committee. Corporate doesn't move fast unless scandal breathes down their necks. Then it flies. At 10:42, Martin was called into a closed-door session. At 10:53, his assistant, the one who never smiled, was seen boxing up two framed photos and a Mont Blanc pen set from his office. And by 11:06, Cassandra received a meeting invite. Subject: Ethics Review to Confidential. Location: HR Conference, 4B, time, 1 p.m. Attendees: Cassandra R., HR Director, Legal Liaison. She didn't text me again. She didn't call, because by then it had shifted. This wasn't about our marriage anymore. It wasn't about love or sex or betrayal. This was about self-preservation. And Cassandra was starting to realize she'd built her career on the exact same illusion she'd built our marriage on. Charisma over character, presentation over principle. But now her charm was in a manila folder on someone else's desk. And HR doesn't give a damn about candlelight or chemistry. They care about exposure, and I'd given them just enough to ignite a slow, deliberate fire. One she couldn't smother with crocodile tears or boardroom bravado. Every panic click, every deleted chat, every frantic password reset. It was like watching a fish try to wriggle out of a net that had already been reeled in. She tried to delete the past. Too bad I'd already submitted the future. At 11:39 a.m., reception called up to the 17th floor. "Mr. Adler, there's a woman here demanding to speak with you." Her voice was clipped, hushed, but even through the static of the line I could hear it. Cassandra was unraveling. I didn't look up from my monitor, just tapped the side of my pen and said, "Is security present?" "They're with her now. She's raising her voice." Of course she was. Cassandra had always been polished, in control, practiced in the art of appearing reasonable, until the moment it didn't serve her. But today the cracks were widening, and under pressure, the Polish turns to poison. Down in the lobby, she was pacing in her heels like a storm in a glass box. Security footage showed her gesturing wildly, lips moving a mile a minute. She wasn't sobbing anymore. She was shouting, "Get him down here! I'm his wife! I have a right to speak to him!" She said that last one while jabbing her finger into the chest of a retired cop with arms like tree trunks and a face that hadn't changed expression since Reagan left office. I leaned back in my chair and watched the grainy footage feed. Cassandra in her tailored blazer and smeared lipstick, flailing in the fluorescent light like a woman trapped in her own headline. A few CO workers hovered behind me, pretending not to look. They knew something was up. I hadn't said much around the office, but they weren't stupid. You don't come in on a Wednesday with 3 lawyer calls on your schedule and a new login password unless something's burning. And Cassandra, she was holding the matchbook. She reached into her purse at one point. A bad idea. One of the guards stiffened. She pulled out her phone and slammed it onto the check-in desk. "I know he's in there. I saw his car. You can't keep me from my husband." The word sounded foreign coming out of her mouth now. Husband, like it belonged to another life. I tapped the intercom on my desk. "Reception?" "Yes, Mr. Adler." "No contact," I said calmly. "Escort her out and send her the notice." The notice had been ready since 9 o'clock a.m., sealed envelope, hand delivery instructions, containing the formal revocation of spousal access to all joint accounts, benefits, and property. It was also a cease and desist for workplace disturbance, signed by building security and witnessed. Reception hesitated. "Would you like us to notify HR? Let them know she's no longer authorized for any visitation or access under any pretext. If she returns, police are to be called immediately." There was a pause. "Yes, sir." I turned off the monitor. I didn't watch the rest. Humiliation, when it's earned, doesn't need to be enjoyed. It just needs to be documented. And besides, I had emails to send. My life wasn't stopping because Cassandra couldn't keep hers together. But part of me imagines the moment the guard handed her that envelope, the way she'd rip it open with shaking hands, expecting some olive branch and finding legal teeth instead. No love letter, no apology, just a formality, like the moment at the end of a chess game when the king isn't toppled, just surrounded. And all she could do was scream. At exactly 1 o'clock p.m., Cassandra stepped into conference room 4B, the one they use for damage control, the one with no windows. She was 30 seconds late, unusual for her. She'd spent the last 5 years gliding into meetings 5 minutes early, a Starbucks cup in one hand, faux casual confidence in the other. But today, no coffee, no confidence. Just a tight-lipped nod to the HR director and a flicker of panic in her mascara-caked eyes. She was met by 3 people, HR, legal, and someone from employee wellness, which was just a sanitized title for corporate babysitter during meltdowns. They didn't offer small talk, no water, no pleasantries. They slid a folder across the table. Inside were stills of her texts, receipts, audio transcripts, a copy of the company's ethics guidelines, and, at the bottom, stapled neatly, a formal notice of suspension pending investigation. She barely got through the second page before her voice cracked. "This is insane," she whispered. This isn't even verified. Anyone could have—" The legal liaison cut her off. Calm, professional, lethal. "We've reviewed the metadata. All submissions match internal records and account histories." Cassandra blinked. "Submissions?" "Yes," HR replied. "The package was thorough, anonymous, but traceable through verified data sources. Translation: we know it was your husband, and we're not going to pretend otherwise." They didn't ask for her side of the story. They didn't want to hear about emotional distance or power imbalances. This wasn't a conversation. It was a countdown, and the clock had already been ticking before she stepped in. Back at my end, I was in a different kind of room. Not windowless, spacious and sunlit. My private banker's office. Quiet, fragrant, and full of numbers that had my name on them. We were reviewing transfers. Small, surgical shifts. Joint credit card, canceled. Secondary beneficiary access revoked. Emergency savings account linked to her old login, sealed. Pending verification trust account I'd opened for future family planning, retitled and insulated. Cassandra had always called me obsessive about the financial details. She laughed when I updated passwords monthly, mocked the spreadsheets I kept that tracked asset appreciation and withdrawal history. But that day, as she sat in a cold conference room watching her career evaporate in front of her, those spreadsheets were doing exactly what I designed them to do: protect me. By 3:45 p.m., her badge access had been deactivated. I know because she tried to log into the company internet from her phone and triggered a lockout notification. At 4:02 p.m., I received a notification that our last jointly held portfolio, a small mutual fund under her brokerage, had been split and moved into personal custody under my existing marital exemption rights. The paperwork was dry, clinical, beautiful. And at 4:37 p.m., she called again. I didn't answer, but I listened to the voicemail. "Doug, I don't even know where to start. They suspended me. Martin's gone. They're reviewing everything. I need to talk to you. Please, we can fix this. We can explain. It doesn't have to be like this." Her voice was cracking like drywall under pressure. Gone was the smirk. Gone the big deal tone. Now she sounded like a woman halfway off a cliff, grabbing at air, realizing gravity doesn't negotiate. She hadn't just lost a husband, she'd lost the illusion of control. The condo, mine. The car lease, mine. The retirement contributions she ignored for years, while she built her social capital on company credit, mine. And the savings she thought were ours. Protected by prenup clause, bank insulation, and 2 lines of legal firewalls. Cassandra had always believed in netting comfort over commitment. She just never thought I'd cut the net. Now she was suspended from her job, isolated from her finances, and staring down the hollow echo of every lie she thought would never matter. She wasn't just watching her world fall apart. She was finally understanding it was never hers to begin with. The knock came just after 7:00 p.m. 3 soft raps, then silence. I already knew it was her. Not because I'd been expecting it, but because desperation has a rhythm, and hers was right on time. I let her knock again, harder this time. Then I opened the door. There she stood. Mascara smudged, lips trembling, hair pulled back in a messy bun like she'd tried to make herself look humble, like she thought dressing down would soften the impact. She wore that beige sweater I'd once bought her for a chilly trip to Vermont, a trip she now probably couldn't afford. Her eyes were already watering, which meant the tears had been rehearsed in the car. "Doug," her voice cracked like old vinyl, I know I've said some horrible things. I know I've made mistakes." She took a shallow breath, then reached out, not quite touching me, but hovering close enough to suggest intimacy we hadn't shared in years. "But we can fix this. We can talk, right? I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I miss you. I miss us. Please." I didn't say a word. I simply turned, walked to the entry table, and retrieved the envelope I had sealed earlier that morning. Off-white, thick, her name written in clean print, centered. I handed it to her. She looked confused for a second, hesitated, then opened it with shaky fingers. Inside, a printed list of her belongings, inventoried and boxed, all labeled, all available for pickup from a storage unit 2 blocks from the condo. A key deactivation notice from the condo building management, signed and time-stamped, a 1-line statement, all further communication to be handled via legal counsel. Her hand dropped slightly. I looked her in the eyes, just 1 sentence, no anger, no emotion. "Mistakes have a cost." She blinked, waiting, like she thought there'd be more. A speech, a tear, a sliver of forgiveness. But there wasn't. Because this wasn't a scene in some romantic drama where the husband breaks down and forgets everything because the lighting is good and the music swells. This was real life, and real consequences don't come with soundtracks. She stared at me like she was trying to solve an equation that suddenly didn't compute. The man she'd assumed would always be predictable, the one she once called passive in couples therapy, had just shut the door on her lifeline. No shouting, no insults, just the final transaction. I watched her mouth open to say something else, maybe some last-ditch attempt at rewriting history, but I'd already started closing the door. And this time it clicked behind her with finality. Not just locked, sealed. She had come expecting access. Instead, she walked away holding a receipt. She was sitting at a cafe off 3rd, the one she used to gloat about. Their chai lattes are life, she once told me, like overpriced foam was a badge of sophistication. It was 11:42 a.m. cloudy, the kind of weather that feels like a held breath before a storm. Cassandra sat alone at the corner table, nursing a lukewarm drink and scrolling through her phone with a kind of nervous energy that doesn't quite show on the surface but leaks into every twitch of the thumb. She looked thinner, not in the flattering way, in the way that stress carves at the body before it gets to the mind. She didn't notice the courier until he was right in front of her. Plain black jacket, slim leather case. He pulled a thick envelope out and placed it on the table beside her coffee. Cassandra Reed. She nodded, confused. Yes? You've been served. She didn't even have time to react before he walked away. No drama, no lingering, just a handoff, like she was receiving an ordinary package. But what she opened was anything but ordinary. Inside the envelope, finalized divorce papers, full disclosure of assets, confirmation of zero alimony per clause 14 of the prenup, formal declaration of marital breach, a legal summary of her workplace's executive ethics contract, which, due to her confirmed misconduct, activated forfeiture of all end-of-year bonuses and pending stock options. It was all legally clean, every page notarized, every term airtight. She rifled through it, her hands trembling now, her mouth slightly open like she wanted to say something, but the words hadn't downloaded yet. And then she saw it. At the very bottom of the packet, clipped to the last page, was a single folded note. In my handwriting it read, "You once called it a big deal. I just made sure it was." That's when she froze. Her lips moved, trying to say something to herself. Maybe deny it, maybe whisper some excuse into the air, but her hands went limp. The paper slid from her fingers, and then the real blow landed. She looked up. Across the street, exiting the glass doors of their corporate headquarters, was Martin, box in his hands, plant sticking out the top. His assistant walking 2 steps behind, holding a sealed manila envelope and his branded laptop. He didn't see her. Or maybe he did and didn't care. His tie was loose, his face slack. His career had just ended quietly, efficiently. No scandal, press release, no fight, just removal. Like a rotten tooth pulled while you sleep. Cassandra looked down again at the documents, then at the street, then at her reflection in the coffee shop window. It was all gone. The job, the security, the status, the fallback man. Everything she'd gambled for collapsed. And the worst part, no one was yelling. No one was slamming doors or hurling insults. This wasn't drama. It was judgment, delivered with surgical grace. And as she sat there, sleeves pulled over her hands, coffee now cold, she realized the real price wasn't what she lost. It was who she'd underestimated. Because I didn't burn her world down in anger. I just turned off the lights and let her see it for what it really was.